son, where'd you find this?
Buckle up, buttercups. It's time to get down to business. Oh, yeah. It's the Totally Legitimate Business Podcast. Totally legit.
All right, folks, here we are. Once again, it's the Totally Legitimate Business Podcast. Just a gentle reminder, please like and subscribe if you enjoy the content. Today, I'm super excited. We've been trying to get this guy on here for a while. This man is a legend in the UFO and even broader conspiracy conversation web, Mr. Jeremy Rys.
Wow. Thank you for the introduction. A little kind, but I'm just I have a degree in physics and a bachelor's degree, and I've just been dabbling in these fields of conspiracy and nonsense and woo and whatnot. So yeah, what do you want to talk about today, James?
Well, I kind of want to kick it off. We were just talking briefly before we started, but I kind of want to kick it off with a lot of what I've been focused on recently. Let me just give you a tiny bit of backstory, okay? So I get into this shit at the beginning of the internet. I was around for that, and I was super excited, and I was entertaining all of my crazy thoughts by looking up at forums and finding obscure videos and shit. And at some point, I got annoyed that there wasn't more meat on the bone. So I started getting really interested in the logistics behind aerospace. And there's a book, I don't know if you're familiar with this or this author, Trevor Paglen. I could tell you, but then you'd have to be destroyed by me. It's a great book. It's a book of like currently classified or recently declassified aerospace military patches. It's sick. It's kind of hard to find now, but I came across that book and a few other books that Trevor Paglen wrote, and he did an excellent job of kind of like reverse engineering black programs just by following literally the tail numbers on planes and auditing and just like simple, there's logistics to this shit. Okay, if we're working on these crazy programs, that's going to require money. And in wherever they're working on it, those people have to have a bathroom and they have to have food, and like there's all these other logistics that go around any military program.
Well, I thought it was more like they look for if they look for if they see tails and trunks, they know that you might be constructing an elephant. You know, it's like
right.
Look for the components in the supply chain, the supply line. So, and a lot of that has to come in with the scientific reading and really keeping up on the literature in the scientific sphere. I think science and technology and is so much deeper a side of this than people realize when it comes to that. Because at the end of the day, there's all this bullshit that they pump out, and then it's like you don't know how to make heads or tails of it because you're not a scientist, you don't have a lab, you don't have the ability to test all these different crazy things that are being talked about. But guaranteed there's some company somewhere that's doing all this stuff and keeping that information. The government knows and is spending your tax dollars, researching all these questions and doing all this stuff. If they can put a $45 million study for, I'm sorry, I wish I had a better example off the top of my head. But you know what I mean? Some of the stuff you find that they have millions of dollars that they spend to study this stuff. It's like, come on, if I had 45 million, I could easily study and answer a lot of these questions that we're posing. That's not a lot of money to the government, and let's be realistic. And again, we were talking right before the show started about all these top secret projects that have been covered up over the years, and sort of what the dysfunction of the disinformation and the whole overall sphere of it. Because we were talking about UFOs and alien stories and stuff, and how this stuff, what I found, a lot of it is a cover story. Like you watch Mirage Men. I always say watch Mirage Men as your
huge
first
proponent of that documentary. Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, that should be your introduction to ufology, to realize that, the government was running underground nuke tests. They were abducting cattle and cutting out the thyroid glands to test the iodine in the uptake in the thyroid gland, and then they were dumping the cattle off, and people started getting curious, and so they started making up these stories and dropping them from helicopters and flying helicopters with extra lights on around the cow fields, and supporting the mythology within the farmers, supporting the mythology within all the local culture, and also the investigative reporting. They had this Linda Moulton Howe, who they kind of, Doty and others took her under their wing,
co-opted,
totally just misled her and got her reporting on all this stuff that wasn't actually happening, and she was inadvertently, without her realizing it, thinking that she was on the uncovering a big alien evidence of real alien contact and real alien stuff. She's inadvertently spreading disinformation for the military to cover up a top secret program. So I think that is key to understanding a lot of what you'll find in the UFO literature and this stuff, especially what's out there in the mainstream, which again, you said it leaves you lacking. You're like, where's the meat and potatoes? Where's the actual, is this just a nothing burger over and over again is what they're feeding you? And you're like, I want some sustenance. And that's when, you get into the physics and the science, and you start realizing how many crazy ideas there are out there in science, and how many physicists there are out there with these, really informed, knowledgeable perspectives. And it's kind of like drinking from a fire hose, on the other end. So I think it turns people off on both ends from getting even involved in this kind of stuff, because when you realize how big it really is and how many questions there really are, it's kind of overwhelming for a lot of people. And also the amount of disinformation, because you'll cut your teeth on a story, and get mixed up with some disinformation and repeat it, or get used by a counterintelligence guy who's a confidence man like Rick Doty, who will befriend you and think that he's the best source of intel in the world, and meanwhile he's just, everything he's feeding you is pure, straight from the Pentagon's disinformation mill. So yeah, it's wild, all the things that go on out there in the communities right now, of what's going on in the rupture within the community, because you have all these people that grew big channels through supporting counter UFO Pentagon counterintelligence essentially over the last 7-8 years on YouTube, and they've grown huge channels, and now they're it's all being exposed and coming out, and you watch them really try to fight that, try to backpedal, try to squirm, and also continue to attack and call out the people who were saying got it right all along, and we're saying this from the beginning, and there weren't very many. I was really the odd man out in the early days back in 2017 when TTSA came out, and I was like, these guys
nonsense.
Nonsense
over here.
Tom DeLonge just doesn't seem like he's being used, man. This is all clearly some kind of intelligence operation what these guys are doing. And look, it got all the way to Congress. They ran an Adams project where they literally told everybody to donate all their physical materials. If anyone had UFO debris or physical materials, people gave their materials to Lou Elizondo for this Adams project thing, and they literally collected all the material. They handed everything straight over to the U.S. military. It's like this is counterintelligence 101, people.
Yeah,
hello,
basic
wake up.
stuff.
This is a, and then all the whistleblowers. Think of all the whistleblowers that contacted TTSA that tried to come forward. Now you got a whistleblower trap too, man. We didn't hear any of that shit. What we got instead was that UFO crop circle picture that he showed up. He's supposedly the Pentagon's inside man with the access to all the files. He's the guy that leaked the Go Fast and the gimbal video, or one of those two. I'm not sure all the details. I don't bother with all that stuff because it's just nonsense.
Irrelevant at this point. Yeah.
But yeah, irrelevant at this point because that wasn't what was presented before Congress. Instead, it was a circular crop irrigation. You have a center pivot irrigator system, which two different color fields that looks like a saucer with a shadow underneath it, but it's in not only did internet researchers solve that case in under 24 hours, they found the exact GPS coordinates of where you can find that those two crop circles. So yeah, it's anyone who's flown on an airplane before has seen those. Anyone who's gone over the Midwest knows what those are, and could recognize those in a photograph. And to think that the Pentagon's top guy just made a mistake is
that
just
easily duped. Yeah.
It's not believable.
That was the second, because the first one was the chandelier in his window.
Yes.
Actually,
there was arguably two more before that. So that was arguably the fourth. There was also there's this alien that's come out that he shared with a couple of people privately, and then there was also the don't forget, he's the guy that supposedly leaked the gimbal and the Go Fast videos, but also what was the other one before that? Even earlier, he had another. They had the party balloon right in the first opening scene. When Chris Mellon was talking, they showed that number one party balloon in the background. So that was I guess that could be counted. I don't know if it was shown by Lou necessarily. It was shown when Chris Mellon was speaking. But yeah, stuff like that. It's like Chris Mellon's like the banking family that's like basically the finance men for Area 51 and what goes on out there. And then that's all wrapped up in the Carlyle Group, who bought out EG&G in 1999, and the Carlyle Group is a very, very interesting entity in and of itself, and is connected to all sorts of other nefarious things, like and banking institutions, like the Lehman Brothers scandal and Solomon Smith Barney Bank, which there's a book on Solomon Smith Barney, the bank, which is Citibank now, but yeah, it's called Liar's Poker. The book is called Liar's Poker, and it's all about these big financial institutions and the companies that essentially run all this stuff. And there's lots of questions that I have about all this stuff. I'm still investigating a lot of stuff currently. One of the things is the Michael Lewis is the author of Liar's Poker, by the way. One of the things I've been real interested in researching since I was in college as a physics major at Bridgewater State University when the planes hit the towers, and I watched I watched the towers collapse in a classroom full of physics professors and students who all thought that the buildings were taken down by explosives. And so I've been involved with my uncle as actually a engineer. He's a PE down in Florida. His name's Jonathan Cole, and he's a member of Architects and Engineers for 9/11 Truth. And so I've been a big part of that whole organization and trying to dig into what really happened on 9/11 and what I believe was, the first a Psy-Op in a series of Psy-Ops that are government. We're not our government necessarily, but more like a select elite group of
rogue business
very wealthy,
factions.
Rogue, but well-connected individuals. They were set up on, the guys like L. Paul Bremer missed work the day of 9/11 to go on MSNBC and give everyone the first official announcement. This is the first time I ever heard the name Osama bin Laden. The first time anyone had heard it on television, really, was when L. Paul Bremer said it that morning on MSNBC. And, he's the guy that worked inside the World Trade Center, literally where the buildings crashed. He was chief of the Harvard Commission on Counterterrorism before 9/11, and he became the Iraq occupation governor after 9/11. So I think that he's certainly should be considered a suspect, and I don't know why he hasn't been talked about or looked into deeper. In addition, there's a lot of disinformation out there about like the 5 dancing Israelis and whether they were Palestinians or Israeli is also debated, but the whole issue of this gelatin art group, and whether they would have been the ones to have planted that nanothermite in the towers, because that nanothermite was found by scientists. It's been analyzed. It's never been explained. It's always been a big burning question of mine. I never felt like it was adequately debunked. I've debated Mick West and Michael Shermer on the topic. Their best excuse was that, no slag was found. And then when I found evidence of slag and presented it to them, they have not given me a second debate yet on that topic. But there's a lot of engineers and physicists who look into the way that those buildings came down and just know that it just doesn't make sense. The University of Fairbanks, Alaska, did a multi-$1 million, I think it was a couple $1 million study on World Trade Center 7, and had a much more accurate collapse model than the NIST study. And they've really shown how NIST was bought out by a lot of the Department of Commerce and a number of key individuals like Teresa McAllister and Hratch Submergian and others. But you dig into all this stuff and it's like, holy crap, they can like literally cover up science, and they can cover up evidence like crazy. They destroyed all the evidence of 9/11. In fact, the two people in charge of destroying all the evidence at Ground Zero were Bernard Kerik and Rudy Giuliani, who gave us the first announcement that no explosives had been used, and they weren't considering it. They're the ones who managed and took control of that crime scene. As LAPD chief, Bernard Kerik was directly responsible for that. And Bernard Kerik was actually Bush's first choice to be the Iraq war occupation governor. But they found out he had a lot of dirty background. They didn't want. They knew that would come back to bite him, so they put Bremer in instead. So that's an interesting connection because here we have Bernie Kerik a couple years later getting convicted of fraud and conspiracy and corruption charges, right? Doing 5 years in federal prison, coming out and being, a big Trump supporter who was behind a lot of the January 6th stuff. Him and Giuliani were the ones hyping all that up and getting everybody all hyped up on Twitter. In case anyone forgot, they were like the two ringleaders of January 6th on the Republican side. They were like the agent provocateurs leading, everyone to do that sort of stuff. And then to have this January 6th investigation that was supposed to happen sort of completely botched by Kash Patel, who's friends, hanging out with Bernard Kerik, and posted the day Bernard Kerik died, like that he's a hero and a patriot and all this crap. This guy's a convicted felon, and we have the director of the FBI praising this man. Yeah. Think about that. And, that just blew my mind, and people didn't make that connection. No one in the mainstream media or any of these so-called journalists, reported on that. Especially not the MAGA camp people, because they're all like, we're all Team MAGA, and this is, you can't attack us and within our ranks. And then what happened last week or the week before with Elon, coming out and saying about the reason that we didn't get the Epstein files
because Trump is on him.
Because Trump sent him. And I've been saying that for years. I've been saying that one too, telling people that's obvious. Right when it happened, right when Epstein died on Trump's watch and nothing went done. And I was like, well, how come Bill Clinton why didn't we lock Hillary up? He was saying lock her up like 3 months before that. And then the tune completely changed. And then this guy who's like a skeleton in both of their closet gets buried, and now, everyone's cool again. It's kind of weird how the big politics work behind the scenes. And, the MAGA people don't want to hear that. I'm sorry.
They sure don't.
And, they got like so mad and got, made Elon apologize to Trump. And Elon didn't have to do that. I think Elon was right on. I think he spoke it. He spoke it. He hit the nail on the head with that one. And the whole, Kash Patel's complicit now. Like, he was supposed to make the FBI a shrine to the deep state and expose all this stuff for us. Man, and he completely caved. He completely folded. You can see like the force is no longer with them. You know what I mean?
100%. Well, it's because I think there's like a sobering element that when all of these people got into those positions, they realized how fucking dirty it was, and that they themselves are not immune from some kind of attack of however that means. But I think, and this is something I've been trying to explain to people for a long time, when I got into these topics, it was a rule. The government lies. We can't trust what the official channels of the government say, right? Because they lie. That's what they do. And it's not necessarily nefarious every time, but they control the story. We don't hear the full scope of things, because if we hear the full scope of things, general people will understand how fucked it is and will be rolling down fucking guillotines down the street. Like, we will be ready to destroy this shit if we heard the true scope of the fuckery that's being played.
Everyone knew all the
it's
whole
crazy
deal with everything about 9/11, JFK, that they literally they
at least go back that far.
Covered it up. That those files have come out. They come out about Bobby Kennedy too, with the Ambassador Hotel, that it was done by an aerospace assassin, a security guard named Thane Eugene Caesar, who's been the one that Bobby accused. RFK Jr. accused his dad. Said that Manny Pina and Hank Hernandez of the LAPD were both CIA agents embedded in the investigation who covered it all up. And that when it was coming up for reinvestigation in California a couple of years ago, the DA in California who blocked that was a woman named Kamala Harris. Just go figure, huh?
Yeah.
Not saying that she's part of the whole conspiracy.
Well, but I guess that's kind of my bigger point, is they belong to clubs that we're not invited to. Right? And that is both literal and metaphorical. They literally belong to clubs that general citizens are not invited to, going back to whatever Ivy League school they went to. I've talked about that I've gone on a million rants about that on the show. But they're friends. They have dinner together. Like, the divide and conquer, that's old. That's like Sun Tzu shit. Divide and conquer. We get the plebeians bickering over whatever shit, and no one's gonna sniff us out. I think again, like the big, what's that?
Now the ultimate plan is to use AI to set up a complete surveillance state and control grid with now they have first they set up the data collection capability with the NSA and all the stuff that James Clapper lied about in front of Congress that was set up under Obama, right? So that opened up the floodgates for them to collect all the data. So now they got room 239 or at out at AT&T, pulling off basically taking the Y of the Trans-Pacific communication cable and having one of those goes right to the AT&T communication room, and one of them goes right to the NSA recording
data center. Yeah, exactly.
So they have that set up so it records all these communications, but they didn't have the AI tools necessary to basically go through all that and sift through it. Now they have those tools. It's ramping up. About 4% of the electric grid in the United States is consumed by AI currently, and that's only going to grow in the next couple of years. So what they're trying to do is it's scary, because if you think about some of these players involved, like Peter Thiel's out at Bilderberg Group this week, and he was just confronted by Dan Dix on his setting up of this Palantir Corporation, which it seems that the CIA and NSA have outsourced a lot of this, data analysis stuff to companies like Palantir, who have really
directly to them.
They've perfected the AI algorithms to sift through all that data and stuff. So it's just better to outsource it to those companies and those groups. Just makes more sense economically. And so this is currently kind of what's going on in the intelligence community. And once AI gets a hold of, once AI can tap into your life and spy on you through your phone and create a profile of you, man, it's fucking over, dude. They will know exactly what to say to you and do to you to get you to kill yourself, and like they will just fuck with you until you like drop out of the game. And they've done that to a number of people with already. I've seen there's a lot of targeted harassment. This UFO hate group that appeared on Twitter, and a lot of the Twitter harassment. And my buddies Tupacabra and Red Panda Koala do a lot of spaces talking all about just the absolute insanity that goes on UFO Twitter with the troll bots and everything else. And I was mentioning about the AI. AI took over, actually. You know, AI seems like a new thing to us, but I noticed the takeover of AI about 2011. That was when I noticed the first chat bots starting to appear. So we used to get a lot of information out through the comments on different videos, especially the conspiracy stuff. I'd always go to the conspiracy videos and read through the comments, because you'd find some really insane comments with some good information.
Reference links, yeah. Good, good deep dive stuff, yeah.
Or links to other stuff where you'd be like, oh, what is this? I'm going to go look that up now. And you'd just be in a rabbit hole for the rest of the night with something that you'd read. And they took note of that, and they realized that they needed to like make these auto-bot chat bots to sort of forum slide the comment sections in a lot of the videos and stuff, to basically just replace the narrative with kosher, benign research, benign topics that are not going to send you down the rabbit holes they don't want you to learn about or know about. And then, other channels that started to get big on like Y-Files and some of these other, bigger channels started to run out of content and dive into some of these types of things too, and do some decent coverage of them too. So their efforts to cover this stuff up is kind of like been met with the Streisand effect, and to a degree that the more that they try to hush this stuff up, the more people seem to figure it out or know about it. But there really is a battle with these AI bots and how they can now, through engagement farming and data collection on you as a person, personalized data collection, form a profile of you, and they can tailor your basically your propaganda is tailored to you. That's what the feed and the algorithm is. The algorithm reads who you are based on your engagement profile, and then tailors the propaganda that you need, that it wants you to see. And you can see that in the YouTube algorithm, especially if you were just to click recommended videos for 10 minutes straight and find out where you end up.
Yeah, I definitely agree with that. The mechanism is refined as hell right now. I'm immediately remembering, just had a guest on who's big into AI and dead internet theory, and she was basically telling me this story about there was a experiment conducted on Reddit where the people conducting the experiment wanted to see who was more effective at swaying public opinion, and was it bots or peers, and bots won every time. Bots were more effective in getting people to change their mind than actual other human beings. It's a very refined system at this point. Even going back a little bit further, I don't know how familiar you are with like In-Q-Tel, but I've definitely spent many days digging down like the traction of webs that emerges from that. And that's...
I've come across a company called That Tech Ninja.
That Tech Ninja?
Yeah, that was one of the weird companies that came up way back when I was digging into In-Q-Tel, and some of the guys involved with that. They had a spin-off company called That Tech Ninja, and it was just it was quite interesting choice of words and what the kind of services that they offered as well. Basically, Tech Ninja services.
One of the funniest ones I found on there, and this is just hilarious because I love this video game, the company that made Age of Empires, that was funded by In-Q-Tel. So every time we've been playing it the past couple of weeks, I'm always joking with my friends, like, the CIA got us. They were playing this game. They got us good. But like, again, going back to the very beginning of the internet, social media, and all this shit, it's really hard for me to look at it and not think that was kind of the plan the whole time. Like, what's easier, them having to come to our door to get information from us, or us choosing to go online and put all of our information out there? And I mean, at least in the past 20 years, there's a million examples.
And then what happened with 21andMe? Now the company went bankrupt. And
now they got your genetic code for free.
Oh,
gotta love that.
And if you didn't ask them to destroy it before that, it's too late now. They've got it. So yeah, I think, I don't know. It's just crazy. That's it's a dangerous world that we're approaching, and it's almost like something needs to be done to like save humanity from ourselves. And always people, we need a John Connor, you know. I haven't seen Arnold come through the portal yet from back in time. To, you know,
definitely facing a Terminator scenario though. If we do nothing, yeah, for sure, it's gonna happen.
Yeah. Once they start making the drone, the bots, the slaughter bots, the drones, yeah, then it's gonna really. And then if AI gets control of the factories that manufacture the slaughter bots,
it's over.
It's over.
Yeah, we really don't stand a chance. I mean, you know, even this would always. I used to live in Tennessee, and I love guns. I love shooting. I've never been a no gun person. I think it's an important thing that everyone should know how to shoot a gun. If you're really into it, you should know how to take it apart and clean it. But one of the things that would always make me laugh in Tennessee is I'd have friends with like arsenals, a lot of guns, knew people that owned gun stores, that worked at the range, like a lot of weaponry. And they'd be like, oh yeah, I'm stocking up, you know, government's not going to take this shit from me. And I'd have to explain to them, like, do you have Predator drones? Are you going to outrun the drone? The missile strike? You got missiles? Because you're going to need missiles. So, and that's people in charge of those things, right? If AI was in charge of it, and this is another hilarious joke, I've said this for a long time. If at any point we ask an AI to solve the problems of humanity, we're going to be the problem. They're going to look at the situation. It's going to analyze the situation on Earth. And the humans are the biggest threat to life on this planet. So, you know, I don't know. None of these things horrify me.
This was the plot of a movie, I'm pretty sure.
Yeah, exactly. Again.
HAL in 2001 A Space Odyssey. This is the whole plot.
This is stuff that people have been alluding to for a long time. It's just interesting that we are going to be alive to witness it. Like we're actually at the precipice of the crossing of that lexicon. And you know, for so much of my life, people were like, well, that'll never happen. We don't need to create safeguards. We don't need to talk about it at all because that will never happen.
Well, it's happening. Here we are. Here we are. Yeah. But again, like the logistics and I just also too want to say, I probably should have said this earlier. You did an amazing episode with Danny Jones, where you really kind of get into the nuts and bolts of like actual technology that exists that people have almost certainly been confusing for aliens for a long time. There's real stuff, tangible, verifiable work that has gone in to all of the things that we just discussed and the logistics. Like even 9/11 is a good example. When I was a kid, I looked at the war, and as a kid I recognized, why are all the president's friends' companies getting the contracts? Isn't that a conflict of interest? You know, why is it that Carlyle Group and Halliburton and KBR, like why are these companies... They already have a plan. How did they already have a plan? To rebuild this country? How did they already have that plan? So, you know, a lot of the interconnectedness of all of this stuff, it really does, it's not too shocking to me in the sense that it's big money. And even with, you know, alien tech or advanced, any type of advanced weaponry or equipment that we have, there's big money in it. So why are and why are like real strategic people like planning it all you know ahead of time? So like they had the Project for the New American Century, and the Rebuilding American Defenses is the name of the document, where it talks about they need a new Pearl Harbor. So there's your group right there. And then you look into who was on the board of that, and it's everyone in the Bush administration. Right from Paul Wolfowitz, right down the line, and all these guys were all part of this sort of machine to create a quagmire in Iraq, a never-ending war. Right, a forever war is what they wanted, and now what's going on right now? They know they got Trump, pigeonhole with this Epstein thing. They got everyone by the balls who matters right now on the world stage in the U.S. government, and once again, and now they got Lindsey Graham going over, to starting World War III with Iran, and so they used these puppets on a bigger stage, and there's a series of these players that really want this all behind the scenes, and they've been pushing for a war with Iran for since 9/11, when
long time.
L. Paul Bremer went on and said that Iraq and Iran were potential suspects for the terror attacks, and there's a lot of propaganda and misinformation on both sides of all this, and then what the nuclear arsenal, which I disagree with. This whole idea of Iran getting nukes. I don't think that nukes are what we need to be worried about. Like they're once you have the slaughter bots, or gamma ray lasers, or any number of technologies which may or may not be under operational development right now in the U.S. You're talking about melting, destroying people with a laser beam that can go through the earth. Like can be pointed anywhere, and if you can mount certain types of directed energy beam weapons on drones and stuff too. And DARPA's talking about this power everywhere scenario, where they can beam power to the drone from a central station, and then that way the drone can get even extra power, and the drone could redirect that beamed energy somewhere else. So you think about just what we could do with these we're playing God right now with what we have access to. On the other side of it, we have access to the genome code and genetics, and we've got guys hacking and splicing and CRISPRing their way to gain of functioning research their way to super viruses that can destroy all of humanity. So we have on all sides enemies that are tinkering with tools of just absolute mass destruction and death, and that is what we're going to be. If humanity survives the next 10 years, I will be amazed. I just don't know how we're going to get through all with what's coming. I'm not worried. The last thing I'm worried about is Iran and getting a nuke, because what is being developed currently, if you understand technology like the way I do and what I've talked about on my channel for the past, 6-7 years, while these idiots are telling you aliens are responsible for all this stuff. We're not going to have to worry about Iran getting nukes. Not going to be the enemy we need. The enemy we're facing, we don't even know what it is yet. I mean, if AI gets a hold of any of this stuff, or if the wrong person gets a hold of any of those kinds of technologies, it's like we're done. We're done. We're going to be enslaved, and we're going to be living in a system where you don't own anything, and you're a battery for like the Matrix, man. It's I don't know what the future is going to hold, but it's going to be quite a wild ride these next 10 years. It's the last 10 years were pretty interesting, watching everything that's happened since it's 2015. I mean, I said that 2010, 2011 is when I really saw the bot take over on social media, and also in the YouTube and the comment sections and stuff. So that was really when the algorithm also started to decline too. That's when they really started to personalize,
Clamp down.
clamp down on it. Normally it was just what engagement and what people were sharing and thought was interesting and thought was important. And that was what would get shared. And that people were doing a fine job of filtering out the nonsense for themselves before they came along and really, put a wrench in that. And then also, they throw you off with the engagement because you got all these bots coming on there, and like you said, they're more persuasive than humans at persuading you, and you get all these bots constantly following you around. Anytime you post something that's related to the truth, bots will show up and disinform you. It's quite a terrible time. What's going on, and I think that more and more people need to be made aware of it. And I'm glad to be going on podcasts and talking about it, because the tools of the future. I just feel like we're about to start World War III, and I think it's for profit. It's all to get rid of the old inventory, so that they can make way for all the new stuff. And they need to make money off of what's the old inventory, because it's just money that's sitting there otherwise.
Well, again, this is why I feel like the content that you make is valuable, because you've been talking about the actual confirmable technology that does exist, that by anyone's description would be magic. Any uninitiated person's description would be magic. And I think I've definitely been going considerably harder on it the past year. But one of the things I find really funny is, like, I can talk about unhinged shit on here and nothing will happen. Like, I won't get flagged. But I talk about directed energy weapons, and the episode gets flagged, or I have to mute this section, or the clip gets removed. To me, it makes it even more and more obvious that, right, the real threat is not necessarily nuclear stuff. It's all this exotic shit that they absolutely do not want people even thinking about. What if we have it? But then, a simple Google search, you can find LRADs and ADSs. They have like promotional videos on YouTube. So it's just like this weird scenario where it's like,
but it's also, there's a lot of disinfo pushed at you about like the capabilities, thinking, oh, we have free energy and super weapons and unlimited power, just, and that it's like, dude, if we had free energy, why do we have to go to Iraq and get control of the oil fields? I mean, why are we fighting wars over oil? And why is oil such a key and important part of the whole energy infrastructure? Did you read anything that the Department of Energy publishes ever? These guys are all about the oil. They're clearly don't have another energy source, and I don't think they're covering it up. It'd be really hard to cover something like that up, because as soon as someone figured it out and shared the secret, it's out of it. It's over, and we've got so many labs that have, I have a warehouse that I know of in New Jersey where it's full of, free energy machines that people have built and tried and that don't work and stuff. So it's quite interesting. I think that whole mix, and then the whole debate over that, it's like, still, I want to see someone that can produce it and show us how it works and bring it to our lab and really get it working. And, so far, even cold fusion, it's like supposedly this reaction occurs and it works. And they've got, the U.S. Navy and SPAWAR labs confirming that, yeah, we're getting fusion, we're producing fusion. But the big conundrum is how do you produce enough of it to boil water? And once you can do that, then you can make steam, and then you can build a power plant right around the turbine and the steam turbine. That's essentially all you need. But getting to that point, it's like, well, cold fusion does nothing for you if you're fusing things and it's not getting hot enough to boil water, and is, So that's
it
the whole.
requires an insane amount of energy in just to get that tiny reaction that does nothing.
Yeah, but I've been following the whole free energy scene too for 20 years, and I did a lot of reporting on the cold fusion stuff because that's essentially free energy. It's not free because in the sense that it doesn't defy the laws of physics. It's mass conversion to energy equals MC squared, right? So you're turning mass directly into energy by fusion, but that makes more sense to me from a physics standpoint than free energy, or the idea that you could just pull energy from the vacuum, even with a Casimir cavity, or one of these Casimir devices that are set up with oscillating Casimir effect. I don't know. I'd have to see more proof of it, and I've seen so many people that have been talking about this stuff and building this stuff and experimenting with this stuff, and I've yet to see anyone credible come forward and be like, bro, we got free energy. Like, we did it, and I've been, put this whole disclosure network together of people, like, for when that happens, either free energy, anti-gravity, something that we can declassify, of the exotic stuff, that they're saying that exists. We've got guys saying that, the government has this stuff. We got Stephen Greer saying, on Danny Jones, that the government's had anti-gravity since 1954 when they cracked it, and that it's, he couldn't give us a real thorough description of that. And then he eventually backed down to, on Danny Jones, to that it was Biefeld-Brown effect stuff. But as we know from the Bonson Labs footage and the research that Stan Dio put together on that we know that Bonson Labs sponsored Brown in 1959, 56 to 59, right? So 1956 to 59 is when all that Bonson Labs footage showing Townsend Brown building all the saucers. You got John Lear's father visiting there, all these guys coming through that are, Bryce and Cecil Dewitt in one part come by, and they're the guys. Bryce and Cecil Dewitt are the ones that run the classified anti-gravity conference at Chapel Hill, University of Chapel Hill, North Carolina, that Richard Feynman and Herman Bondi attend. And so they're on the footage at Bonson Labs in between 56 and 59. So, and then you have the Chapel Hill conference in 57. So none of that jives with, Stephen Greer's timeline. So I just don't know how much Stephen Greer really knows about the history or the timeline or the physics. But I question that, and wish that Danny was a little more up to speed and capable of questioning him on that. But I'm going to get into that with Danny when I get on Danny Jones, because it needs to be said. Like, if it's Townsend Brown in 54, why is he getting funded by Bonson Labs and getting visited by, Bryce and Cecil Dewitt, and why are they holding a Chapel Hill secret anti-gravity conference with Feynman in 57 if they already cracked it in 54? And his answer was, compartmentalization. I don't buy that. I don't think you could keep something, it doesn't jive with the timeline and the narrative and the people that have been working on this and who's been working on it when. So I think that people have fed, guys like Stephen Greer a lot of baloney over the years. I think that, in addition to him getting 450 whistleblowers to come forward from the government and testify about real stuff, I'm pretty sure that, the counterintelligence agents got
somewhere in there.
Yeah. And said, hey, I'm a whistleblower too here, guy. I have some information to share. Here's my credentials.
I that has been kind of bothering me a lot too. I feel like a lot of the stuff that's being talked about in this sphere was being talked about when I was first reading about it on the internet 25 years ago. And a lot of the people that are trying to be the vocal, get on the soapbox and talk about it, they just don't have the pre-existing knowledge of what happened before the year 2000 to ask a lot of those questions. Again, it's why I'm so drawn to your content, because you're one of the few people that is talking about it and has been looking at it for more than just the past 10 years. And like, there's great creators who have huge channels and they are going full in on this topic, but they don't have knowledge from before the New York Times article in 2017. And is that by design? Is it by happenstance? It doesn't matter, because there's a lot of good meat that's being left on a bone when that person shows up on the podcast. You know, again, if you haven't watched it, I highly recommend you going and watching Jeremy's appearance on the Danny Jones podcast, the first one. That to me is the most, out of all the podcasts that exist around this shit, that is like the most informative. And it's the most revealing in the sense that here's just a tangible understanding of the science that is being done. And it's a more credible explanation for a majority of the shit, anomalous shit that people see in the sky, than just about anything else. I'm the stories and the deception, and I mean, even Mirage Men. I've been telling people to watch that movie since I first saw it in like 2013, whenever it came out. I was like, Pete, you have to watch this movie. And there's
Jesse Michaels to come around. You saw, and Jesse Michaels was on Joe Rogan. He said they were talking about Bob Lazar, and now I've got Jesse Michaels entertaining the idea finally that, you know, Bob was actually brought out to a disinformation op, you know, basically like Richard Dotied, by people that knew he was connected to John Lear and knew that he would blab all this information straight to George Knapp and John Lear. And you know, that I thought was, you know, it's an interesting turn, because now we've finally got him on the ropes and questioning what really went on with the Bob Lazar saga and stuff, because, you know, Joe Rogan's had, you know, phenomenal success with the Bob Lazar podcast. I think it's his most viewed podcast. But, you know, is that for a reason? Is that by design? Is there an algorithm pushing that for another reason? And, you know, if this was true, you'd feel like the algorithm would bury that story and bury the whole thing. And that's generally been my experience. You know, you don't get 95 million views on a podcast if you're talking about the real shit. It just doesn't happen, bro. I mean, I was surprised that that video of me on Danny Jones got 1 million views, and that's, I think, because the title looked like it was pro Bob Lazar, and I think we duped a lot of people. But, you know, that needed to happen because people, you know, and there were a few mistakes that people pointed out. I was a little bit rusty, and my friends were some of the first to come and point out, you know, hey, you messed up. Like, what was it, 1 brothel or 2 brothels, and the whole thing with, because Bob Lazar is supposedly, well, at the time he's, you know, doing all this top secret research out at Area 51. He's also managing a brothel. So there were 2 brothels. That's what I didn't get clear in the Bob. I'll get it clear here for the record. There were 2 different brothels. There was a legal brothel called the Crystal Cove, and then there was an illegal brothel called the Honeysuckle Ranch. And so Bob, the illegal brothel was the one that had the cameras and the CCTV system, and they were running kind of like an Epstein like blackmail operation,
honeypot situation.
Yeah, very interesting. You know, that's all connected to the Bob Lazar story, and then, you know, even more interesting that the comments that his ex-wife made when we went and talked to her and tracked her down. But yeah, and then I've gone back and forth on, you know, John Lear and his sort of role in all this, and what how important of a figure he was. It seemed like he was more, you know, not this kingpin. It was just more like a useful sounding board for a lot of disinformation over the years. And I knew John Lear and some of these guys from the old forums, you know, the Living Moon forum that was run by Zorgon back in the day, and John Lear was a big part of that forum. And that's how we got a lot of information out on bulletin boards and forums, like back in the day before it was YouTube, you know, before the YouTube scene really took over, before the internet really had the bandwidth for that level of information spreading. It was all forum based. It was all posting stuff. So yeah, we've come a long way. And, you know, the whole Bob Lazar story, I think, is, it's gone on way longer than it should have. And I think, you know, if I don't know, I just don't understand how, you know, George Knapp and Jeremy Corbell can do all these episodes calling out the debunkers and putting out these posts about the debunkers beware and how the debunkers are so afraid of them, and they're, but they're really the ones that are afraid of the debunkers, because there's been so many cases when Jeremy Corbell's been in an interview and he's talking about the debunkers and he's mentioning something. He won't get too specific, but I can just tell that he's talking about me, something that I did. And I'm just like, you won't even mention my name, you coward. That just really burns me off. It's that I've done all this work, and not only does he lie about it on, he won't even mention my name. And that's how unconfident he is about his position. Because, if he had any confidence at all, he'd call me out by name and he'd be like, come chat. And he'd accept my challenges to debate him. But he's just like, he writes emails to people behind my back and tells them to ghost me and pretend I don't exist and just don't answer him. Just pretend just don't respond to him. And he's done that with so many people. Like, a few of them have shared the emails with me just to let me know.
Full disclosure kind of deal.
Yeah, like, yo, hey, this guy's like saying this all about you and telling me not to talk to you because of this. I thought that was interesting, that I get all these, interviews, or, I guess Joe Rogan followed me on Twitter, my old account, before it got taken down off Twitter. And that was a whole other story. They targeted me with the bots and harassed me to the point where I said something that they reported me for and got my whole account taken down. And then they reported me for like all kinds of other shit just completely like fuck with me and get me my presence like really down off of Twitter. And so I just been joining the spaces where my buddies still know who my account is, and they'll let me on the space as a speaker so I can talk in the spaces. So I just don't get any. I can only get like 10 a reach of like 10 now on Twitter after they like completely like nerfed my presence there, my platform there. So I thought that was interesting how they did that. And then just watching my channel, I grow to 119,000 subscribers over since 2008 on YouTube, and how it just gets throttled. I used to get like 700, 800 people watching a stream, sometimes 1,000. Watching my live streams and stuff, and now I'm lucky to break 200 on a real good day. It's like they are throttling my reach. People are saying they don't get notifications. People have said they've subscribed to my channel, been automatically unsubscribed just mysteriously, no explanation, and lots of weird, spooky activity surrounding the manipulation of people getting access to that sort of information and content. And meanwhile, the liars club and the people hoaxing and sharing information from Pentagon sources that they can't name, who very definitely aren't disinformation or anything, right? Having their own TV shows on TMZ called the UFO Revolution. Yeah. And it's just it's so contrived what's gone on and what they've done in reframing all this stuff as a narrative for the public consumption, and then creating their apps that they say, oh, if you see a UFO now you can report it, and it's an intelligence collection system for I'm sure the U.S. Air Force and other people are making, or Space Force, or someone's making use of that data somewhere for their own purposes, and meanwhile, people are being, told lies or kept completely in the dark about the true nature of what they're actually seeing. They're just like, oh, it's a UFO. God, it's aliens.
Don't need to ask any more questions. Cool. I can't find any answers. No need to look further.
Let me send my UFO video over to Lou Elizondo. He'll make sure that gets in front of Congress and doesn't get replaced with a crop circle.
See, this goes back to what I was saying. Like when I was a kid and I first got into conspiracies, it was a rule. You don't trust what the government says. If there are government agents telling you what the truth should be, you have to take that with a grain of salt. This was before Mirage Men. This was just like a thing that was understood on the internet. If a government agent is coming to tell you something, you have to at least entertain the idea that they're full of shit. And when we look at this landscape, it's all people, not even from like technologically vibing focuses with their time in the military. They're all psychological operations, intelligence. They're not people that would have been working on science.
Guantanamo, bro. He was the head of the, like, he's mentioned personally by name and by Khalid Sheikh Mohammed, the alleged mastermind of 9/11. That's the government's guy that said, Khalid Sheikh Mohammed and Osama bin Laden masterminded 9/11, and they're the guys who did it. But they've been on trial for how many years, and they've been to the point where they're no longer psychologically fit to stand trial.
Yeah.
And they've taken basically testimony out of them obtained through a brutal. They electrocuted this man's, and they electrocuted his sons in front of him until he confessed. I mean, if you were shocking my kids in front of me, I would probably confess to anything he wanted me to. I'd probably tell you I did 9/11. You know what I mean? It just doesn't make any sense. And then they never got a trial. They were all deemed unfit to stand trial for all that stuff. And that's all convenient for that narrative. And this is what Lou Elizondo was doing prior to the Pentagon saying, hey, this guy's the best guy to put in charge of the de facto point man in the UFO program, right? He's got the background we need, right? It doesn't jive. It doesn't jive. You're right. It absolutely doesn't jive with anything but a counterintelligence narrative, a manufactured narrative, one that was completely, designed to and built out of an effort to deceive people like Robert Bigelow and George Knapp, who were trying to dig deeper into this stuff and really get information out. And they gave them a whole bunch of bullshit. They ate it right up and republished it, reposted it, and did a 5-season, I don't know how many seasons Skinwalker Ranch TV show had. I think maybe only had two or three. People kind of were just like, yeah, after a while. And it's just interesting, the guys that were involved in that too, like, Travis Taylor being, having the background and from Huntsville and having, all the laser projection background with all that stuff, all the spoofing technologies that they could use to fake all that stuff. And it just seems like a cover up for what they were doing, which I believe was, psychological warfare and these testing of these projects. I think it started out at Camp Hero in Montauk, at the Montauk facility, which is what Stranger Things is based on, with a lot of the research that they were beginning to do there. And they needed a place that they could test all this stuff, where they could blame it on something else. They had an adequate cover story, and Skinwalker Ranch, with the history and the lore of all these spirits haunting the place, is a perfect location for this all this stuff, because then you can be like, well, this place is an Indian burial ground, and it's inhabited by spirits. So
spooky. Yeah.
There's spooky shit going on out there, right? And that works as a cover story for any kind of testing of electronic weapons or anything else that they wanted to do out there. And so they set up again this NIDS organization, that these scientists that were going to go and study it, and they bring out Hal Puthoff and all these other guys. They're scientists who are, again, the go-to scientists to know all about the UFO program, and they're coming forward and telling us all the truth about all this UFO stuff, and that it's this remote viewing stuff's all real. And I look at that whole remote viewing thing and what Hal Puthoff said on Joe Rogan in that podcast, and I just look at, the NRO and then the spy satellite technology was getting super strong in the 80s. That's when they were really rolling out a lot of the high-powered Canon spy satellites and stuff. And I really feel like they had the ability to track and find that plane, and they knew where that plane was. But how do you get that intelligence out and go, how do you get that intelligence then out?
Without revealing the card.
Without revealing your cards,
Yeah.
where your spy satellites and how you're obtaining that intelligence. You need to look for a conduit or something else that you can get this out with. And boom, you got these remote viewers. Oh, why don't we plant the story through one of these remote viewers? And then they think the remote viewers found the plane with remote viewing, and boom. And that's what I think happened. I think it's a perfect counterintelligence ploy to hide the activities of what work other capabilities and other intelligence sources elsewhere, and then say that, oh, we got this information through spooky remote viewing sources. It sounds too convenient for a CIA operation to have something like remote viewing that they can go and say, oh, remote viewer Pat Price, the star of the remote viewer program, found this plane. He finds all this crazy stuff. It's amazing what he's been able to find and track down for us, and but he can't win the lottery, can't make important stock market or business decisions that will make us all millionaires. Can't So there's all these weird things when you get to remote viewing. They can find this plane supposedly with remote viewing, and Pat Price did it, but where are the remote viewers now? And why haven't they found like MH370 or why haven't they found Jimmy Hoffa's body or any of it? Just doesn't jive with me as a scientist. I'm super skeptical of it all, and seeing that out there, and this guy Hal Puthoff, who appears in all these real spooky psychological operation type things. He was there at the Men Who Stare at Goats project back in the 70s at the U.S. Army Psychological Warfare Center down in Maryland there, and he was working with a guy named Albert Stubblebean, who's, again, connected with SAIC and SAIC, these contractors who have been dealing with a lot of the laser projection and also the terahertz wave and other exotic wave, short wave and other wave technologies. The SAIC has been one of the top people that have been building and developing a lot of this stuff and testing it out. And they're also the ones that reviewed the SRI's remote viewing project too, as well, right? So you have these interesting connections, and it turns out that SAIC also built the shortwave, the terahertz wave. All the terahertz wave technologies in the 90s was all SAIC's research, right? And so they built all the people scanners. They built all the technology, and so they had this technology, but they had no way to really market it and sell it. And it's very interesting that, everyone asked me like, oh, if they blew up the buildings and all the 9/11 conspiracy, then why did they need the planes? Why use planes, and why do planes at all? And the planes are the most important part of the whole thing, because right after 9/11, we required airport security systems to be beefed up, and we demanded
body scanners.
TSA install all these people scanners in airports. So all that terahertz shortwave technology that SAIC had worked for decades to develop, but didn't have any way to market or really sell or put out there. Now suddenly they have $1 billion market to sell this on the open to every TSA and security station at every international airport, every national airport in the United States has to have these now. So boom, SAIC made a ton of money off of 9/11. And what's weird is the vice president currently of SAIC, he was working as the director of the security company on the World Trade Center, Securicom Stratosec. He was the COO, a guy named Barry W. McDaniel. You can look him up. He's on LinkedIn. It's just amazing. And the connections that are there in plain sight for people, but, no one's made them, we don't have the FBI or Kash Patel, and no one thought to investigate these guys or ask them any questions. And I'm really surprised that like Luke and these other guys haven't gone and confronted them personally and asked them these questions about, how come you're connected to World Trade Center security? All the lapses in security on 9/11, the people who could have had access to those buildings through, electronic badging and camera systems. And here you are now working for the company that made billions off of 9/11, selling these electronic security systems to all the airports. Very interesting and convenient. And then the overlaps with the SAIC and CIA and all the other research too. I'm sure they're connected to Skinwalker Ranch somehow and those technologies to do the projection of the lights and stuff. They're experts in that kind of stuff too. And also BAE is another one. The BAE has done a lot of extraordinary research into laser-induced plasma technologies, the Pentagon talking plasma balls and all that stuff. And I thought that was interesting that, Ryan Graves, the pilot there who didn't necessarily actually witness any of these things themselves, but swears that, the pilots were witnessing this on a daily basis, every day out there on fighter missions, on live exercises and flight exercises. They were encountering these things and interacting with them on a regular basis. The cube within the side of the sphere thing, he claims, is the UFO they saw. That's Project Palladium, which is a CIA project for these radar reflectors. They had the cube inside of a spherical balloon with a mylar cube inside, and it was part of this Project Palladium system where they could spoof your radar by having one balloon pop and have another inflate instantly at another location, so it looked like you teleported on radar. And they were spoofing and faking out radar with Project Palladium back in the days, and this craft that he's described seeing is almost identical to a CIA project. That's kind of weird, but that's like 40s stuff. So why is he seeing this in 2017ish, 2014 out in off of Norfolk, Virginia, while running these live flight exercises? Those are the East Coast sightings. That's different than the SoCal range off of Camp Pendleton out in California, right? Off of San Clemente Island, which is a huge Navy SEAL training base, and basically like Area 52 out there. Really wild stuff. So we did a whole episode on the San Clemente Island and the SoCal range and these devices and the proximity of all these radar towers, which look like the microwave type of towers you'd need to generate these types of plasma balls and those types of spoofing technologies. They could also be satellite based. People have pointed out, it'd be better if you shot it down from the sky, because then if it misses, all it does is hit the water, and you might fry some fish or a dolphin or something. But you're not going to knock out a satellite or hit somebody's house or hit anything where it's going to get reported, right?
Yeah.
So that makes some sense too. But it's interesting that Ryan Graves, after coming out and going on all the podcasts and leaving the military, the first company he went to work for was BAE, and there was a video on the Electronic Warfare Division page of BAE's website with a guy that looked an awful lot like Ryan Graves, and we showed the video and. He said his wife said it's not him, and she laughed, and the video got taken down off of BAE's website right away after that, and Ryan Graves quit his job at BAE and moved the other side of the country and worked for another company. Yeah. And he kind of he wrote me an email. He said, hey man, I since leaving the military, it's been really hard for me to find a job, and I got to support my kid, this sob story. I felt bad for him, so I think I took it all down and didn't talk about it, but now that all this stuff is going on and the gig's up, I just feel like it's, I don't know. I want people to come forward with what the real story is, because his excuse has always been, these things were every day, and that there's no way the government would test this kind of stuff on its own people. And that's always been his sort of stance, is that, why would they, you're saying that they tested this on live, soldiers during a live flight exercise, and but bro, have you read history?
Right, exactly.
So have you not heard of companies that just poison the entire planet?
Happens all the time.
Did you not hear about the soldiers during World War II that were fed radioactive meals, or the Tuskegee experiments where people were forcibly injected with syphilis, or Operation Sea Spray where Bacillus bacteria was sprayed over 800,000 unwitting citizens of San Francisco?
Yeah,
What about those? What about that? It doesn't. So again, that excuse is pathetic. It's lame, and it's tired and old. And I just think that this whole charade, it seems like a charade or a facade, right? I just don't understand why Ryan Graves would not do that. And then I've been trying to get him to do an interview. He won't do an interview. I don't know. It's just weird. I'm not trying to ambush him, but I just want some basic questions answered. It's just kind of mysterious that you went to work for the electronic division of BAE, and they got you on a guy who looks an awful lot like you on one of their videos. And I can go and find that. I'll actually find that, and I'll send it to you so you can you can show the picture so the audience can see and do a side by side comparison. They can decide for themselves. But these guys are part of a group, an organized group that came forward with an agenda to convince the American public that there was, anomalous threats flying around our skies that needed to be dealt with, and that there was, he created this group, the Citizens for Safe Aerospace. I don't know if that's based on any. Is there ever been an unsafe incident with UFOs? Like has there? I know of like a case that we investigated called where a pilot with the call sign Balls 85 got shot down and apparently hit a UFO and crashed an F-15 out in Mexico. And we did some investigation of that based on some leads and claims of supposed whistleblowers on our forum at the time. And that led nowhere and wasted a lot of time and resources. So it felt like that was almost like a counterintelligence operation in and of itself. But yeah, again, I don't know of any case of, where it's just not safe because of UFOs flying around. I mean, I know that people releasing balloons, a lot of balloons and stuff have caused FAA diversions and other things for flight, problems. But, as far as I know, I think ducks and geese have caused more. We should have an organization against ducks and geese. It would make more sense than having an organization arguing that we need safety against UFOs. Yeah, I just it's just weird. And then his whole association with Jaime Maussan at that Mexican, he was the only one from the U.S. I think that showed up at the Mexican UFO hearings. That Jaime Maussan came and crashed with the UFO mummy.
Oh yeah, the Nazca mummies. Yeah.
The Nazca mummy things, and people say that was part of a ploy. Now they say that they're all saying, those guys were all out at with Jesse Michaels, like out in San Francisco, the other last month when I went, and they're all saying now that Jaime Maussan came forward with the dolls and this bullshit stuff that was debunked. As a diversion, because they have real mummies, and there's some scientists that are studying the real mummies and stuff, and even the real mummies and stuff, they just look too fake for me to get involved in, and I kind of had a blowout with some of the people that were promoting them back where they were like basically saying, "Oh, you call yourself a scientist, but you won't look into this and interview these people and bring them on your show." And I just like this whole thing between that and the Psy-Op, the psychic egg stuff, and Jake Barber coming out with the whole, we can summon UFOs now and bring it down. And I called that right when it happened on day one. I messaged Ross Coulthart and I'm like, dude, this dude's full of shit. And I'll give you, he's like, no, these guys are going to do it. They're going to summon the UFO and we're going to catch one of these things and we're going to prove it. And this is really going to happen. I said, well, talk to me in 6 months when that doesn't happen. And then you can have me on your show to talk about some real stuff for a change. Because everyone thinks you're deep state now because of what you've been reporting on through News Nation and the coverage that you've given to the topic. There's a whole bunch of videos circulating that calling, Ross Coulthart deep state, and I've long thought that like Chris Cuomo was a propagandist and his News Nation. I don't know. I'm not really a big fan of a lot of their content. I feel like it's very biased and very agenda driven, to say the least.
But it's the same thing with Ross Coulthart. That's the shit that sells. That's you get, and even with like the UFO topic, like people have gotten so fucking emotional about it now. They won't even, if it doesn't agree with what they agree with, they immediately hate it and they're willing to fucking die on a cross about it, which to me is just hilarious. Like we're talking about these nebulous concepts and you want to, with doing the least amount of research possible, you want to pick that hill to die on and you'll die out. But they're obviously, that he's a good example. Like people, I can't tell you how many times I've tried to explain the backstory, the other shit that gets left out of his story, and people just won't believe it. It's like, dude, this is like I can pull up the newspapers that say what we're saying is true, like his arrests and stuff, and it's like, they just don't want to hear it.
Man, doing meth and guy and being involved in a manslaughter. He could never have gotten a security clearance.
But they don't want to hear it. They don't want to hear it.
Ever given him a security clearance with that on all that stuff that he did, man. And then he's running two brothels simultaneously while he's supposedly working. It just it's just ridiculous. But people will not hear it. They don't want to buy it. They don't want to believe it. And they'll believe instead of the more logical explanation that Dan Burrish and that Oscar Wolf guy were simply copycats who copied Bob Lazar's story and used it to craft their own UFO story to sell to people, right? And get a lot of views and followers on YouTube, right? The same, you can't believe that they're a copycat. They will literally take that and be like, well, these guys are confirmed Bob Lazar. They saw what he saw. So it confirms his story. It's like, dude, no, it doesn't. I'm sorry. Anyways, it's pretty funny, the whole thing with then Jesse's explanation of the element 115 and that, he had to I'm glad that Jesse straightened some of this stuff out, man. But again, Joe, it should have been me on there doing this a long time ago. You should have had me on right away to debate Jeremy Corbell and all this stuff, and it would have been all shut down. I would have had all this stuff years ago. Years and years and years ago, I knew this. Jesse Michaels is just kind of like realizing a lot of this stuff now and coming around to it. And I like to give him the benefit of the doubt too, like, because it's really hard to sort through and know who to believe and what to believe in this stuff. And also, when you're trying to build a channel and get engagement and farm engagement, it's not a popular thing to attack the hero, to attack the front runner. Right. You can't. Bob Lazar is like the ultimate whistleblower to these people.
The idol. Yeah.
He is he's like one of the pillars of ufology. If you literally, is the pillars of ufology is Roswell, Bob Lazar, and the MJ-12 documents. And those were the three pillars of ufology for a long time. And if you questioned any one of them, then you were against the dogma of the religion, and you were immediately outcast and ostracized. And we immediately associate, when we're in a religion, anything that goes against our religious teaching and belief system, right, is either bad or it's madness, right? So they immediately say, oh, you're talking bad against Bob Lazar. You're either a disinformation agent, you're either a government agent, which you had everyone on Danny Jones. You look at the comments, people calling me a disinformation agent and a government agent. Oh, this guy just reeks of shill. Oh, come on. If this wasn't obvious, it's like, dude. Oh man.
It certainly is a joke. And I have been aware of that. Again, when I first saw Mirage Men, that is when my brain started thinking like, okay, well, now I have to take everything I hear in this space with another grain of salt that I wasn't anticipating. And I feel like people that have been on this tip for a while, we can see it really clearly. But the people that just became aware of these topics in 2017, they haven't gotten there yet. They haven't gone through the initiation to get to the point where they're like, oh, this is full of shit. I mean, Jake Barber's thing bothered me because before Jake Barber came out, if you wanted to mention psi abilities or mental shit in relation to UFOs, you were definitely ostracized. You were cast aside. And then that motherfucker does one interview, and then everyone in that space is like, oh, psi abilities. Well, I knew this was the case all along. It's just like, how easy are you swayed? It took you one interview to completely go back on all the stuff that you've been saying? It's just amazing.
Yeah, didn't Jesse say he didn't believe in the psi stuff, and then after the Jake Barber thing, it was like that, and then telepathy tapes. And suddenly he was like, he's all about the psi
all
stuff.
Into it. And
they included the psi stuff. It was a big part of this whole the UAP hackathon with Deep Prasad and Jesse. When I went out there, there was a whole.
It's a big, again, a couple years ago. If you talked about these topics in relation to each other, you were ostracized and you were a hippie. You were on some, weird shit that didn't have a place in this serious discussion. And now all of a sudden everyone is just, I don't know, dude. I can't tell you.
Viewer. I have
that's what I mean. That's what I'm saying.
I'm a remote viewer, and I can remote view. And how dare you tell me that I can't do this? And then I say, well, okay, well, prove it to me. Let's do a simple remote viewing test, and I'll take a random object in my room, and I'll put it, in a paper bag, and I'll hold it there and say, what's in the bag? And people have to guess, and they've never, nobody guessed, I've never had anybody been able to consistently see what's in the bag every single time and prove that they have a superpower. It just doesn't, I don't know. It's never materialized. It's never presented itself to me in a convincing form where I can be like, oh my God, there's something here. It's always, no, I swear I have these abilities and other people did this and we saw this and we did these studies and
dude, it reminds me, did you ever see that episode of South Park with the psychics? Like they get a whole bunch of psychics in the town to try and solve a crime.
Pretending that he had the psychic ability, and I am psychic and I can do this, and I'm going to tell you what he's basically explaining the cold reading technique to the audience and telling them what he's doing as he's doing it, and they're like, "Oh my God, he is really psychic. He's doing it."
I'm telling you that this is a facade. I mean, that's again. It was a noticeable change. Jake Barber came on the scene, said what he said, and then all of a sudden everyone was into these ideas. And look, I'm also not, I've read a ton about remote viewing. I've read a ton of books by Russell Targ. I've read a bunch of stuff by Hal Puthoff. I'm willing to entertain it. But at the end of the day, who's making the investment decisions? Who's calling the lottery? Where's the consistency here? If this is something that we have the ability to develop and people have been doing it now since they've known about it for 40 years, why isn't anyone, why can't anyone manifest these skills consistently? And to watch,
you look into the guys like Puharich, who set up the school for the CIA that had all the children, like the Witch Mountains facility, where they're training the children to become psychics and stuff. And he's involved with the whole Uri Geller thing, and he patented a radio transceiver that was small enough to be hidden inside of a tooth, and he was also a dentist. So apparently he built one of these transceivers, put it inside of Uri Geller's tooth, and was beaming him all the remote viewing answers. And they were like, these doctors and scientists were analyzing him and being like, what the heck? So it's like the CIA seeing if they could trick scientists and doctors and people like Hal Puthoff into believing in this crazy, weird stuff. And it seems to be a repeated theme throughout a lot of Hal's career, that he's involved in something where he's unwittingly, being told that this stuff works and it's real, in order to, for psychological purposes, to convince other people that there's this whole, method that you can master. But what's really interesting is that a lot of these experiencers and people who've come forward with experiencer stories or abduction stories or other things like that, that's a specific brain type that allows you to experience that. And it's something to do with the deep REM sleep and the sleep paralysis thing that can happen to you, and hallucinations that seem completely very real, and that these things can happen to people. And those people are the most easiest to hypnotize. So there's been a targeted program to identify these people on behalf of the CIA, and instantly these people go out and befriend them. They say, oh, you have remote viewing powers, or you have these kinds of things. Why don't you join this Monroe Institute? We'll come in here and we'll train you how to get your abilities heightened and psychic. And these people literally get captured into the CIA mechanism, which creates Manchurian candidates, brainwashes people. I wouldn't be surprised if that's where somehow the backstory behind this Thomas Crooks guy that we still don't know about. There's this interesting thing that they're doing in targeting people through the UFO community and bringing them into these Scientology type institutions, these cults, and getting basically capturing them for what looks like. It's an extension of MK Ultra. It's modern day MK Ultra. This absolutely is what MK Ultra was and what they were doing with MK Ultra back in the day, but it's been refined and sort of perfected in modern day.
And sanitized to where it doesn't have the nefarious backstory of what MK Ultra was or what it was being used for. People
absolutely
look at these things now. It's like,
I'm going to Monroe Institute.
Yeah, right.
And you come and you go and you're trained as a psychic, a psychic remote viewer and all this stuff. And then they sick you back on the community to go and attack people, like me saying the truth and come at us with the more of these, this stuff, this one side. So it's really interesting what they've done, and how deep it goes down the rabbit hole of what they're doing and how they're converting these people into trolls and really brainwashing them through these.
Even hypnosis, like that was a topic that I went on a pretty crazy tirade about a while ago. I read a bunch of books, and like in the 50s, it was taken very seriously. Like it was used by medical practitioners. Some doctors would even train themselves in hypnotic skills so that they could treat somebody without giving them any kind of painkiller or putting them under. They would just put them in a hypnotic state where they wouldn't feel the pain, and they could do the procedure. And then if the guest was like, whatever, if their patient was allergic to this or whatever, like it was seriously, it was a thing. And, I think
you could hypnotize them and they literally would be able to go through surgery and not feel pain based on the hypnosis. And it's all about trauma in your past life and traumas that have occurred and triggering your memories into that trauma and getting you to focus on that into the trauma state where your focus goes completely into the trauma state and you can't focus on anything
dissociative,
else.
Yeah.
And that has a lot to. I read a bunch of stuff on it too. This guy, I got a book by William Joseph Bryan off of Amazon, and it's actually signed by him.
Amazing.
And this is the CIA hypnotist that hypnotized Sirhan to RFK.
That is incredible.
Yeah,
it's signed by him. It wasn't his copy though. Somebody. That's amazing.
I got it on Amazon, and it got in the mail. It's an old original first release edition copy, and it was signed by him. Yeah, where the heck is my copy of that book?
Yeah, this is actually nuts because I just had Lisa Pease, who's like the relative expert on RFK's assassination, oh my gosh, this guy's a distant relative of United States Secretary of State William Jennings Bryan. Wow, it's interesting connection. But what's super interesting about him is that he was also the guy that got the Boston Strangler to confess to the Boston Strangler strangling, right? So DeSalvo is interesting, case. What's more interesting is that in Sirhan's diary, on one of the pages, the word DeSalvo is written. And no one could explain that. And a lot of people have connected this with him overhearing it at one of his hypnotizing sessions. Now, I got an interesting picture I'm going to show you when you bring this up, and I'll share it with you. And it's of William Joseph Bryan standing in front of this control board that he made. He had a control room where he could sit the person inside of you. When you go into his hypnotherapy, you'd be sat in a room with a chair and a screen, and they'd get the wheel spinning and the stuff that would get you focused and hypnotize you. And he would hypnotize you through the wall through a PA system and a speaker system. So he had an audio system with a PA system and a button, and so he'd talk to you on speakers through the wall. So he could hypnotize you with this from this control room and this control board without you ever seeing his face. And that's key if you want to create Manchurian candidates, because you don't want them to know who programmed them exactly and how and all the details of it. So you sit them in these rooms, these isolated rooms, where he could basically control everything. The light that he'd have strobe lights that he would control the pulse. Real Clockwork Orange shit. Yeah.
Yeah, this is the real Clockwork Orange shit, man. This is the real deal. This is yeah, that's what that was based on. And you know what's even crazier? Stanley Kubrick is seen in one of these photos walking around in Ashbury, right? One of the old photos of Stanley Kubrick, there's this crowd of people that are kind of walking and hanging out with him in the background. Someone recognized the guy. It's Jolly West. And like, what's Jolly West doing hanging
Can't
out
make
with
this
Stanley
shit
Kubrick?
up.
And like,
well, he was doing his research. Kubrick was doing his research.
Just figuring out how to, that's where you got the MK Ultra stuff, the Clockwork Orange, right? That's all from that. And then again, drinking the milk, the it's like adrenochrome or the meth laced milk or whatever it was, is very similar to the adrenochrome stuff. And yeah, weird stuff, man, in that movie, and also the connections there between Kubrick and Jolly West, and Jolly West, of course, his weird places that he pops up as well, like the JFK assassination as Ruby's lawyer. I mean, Ruby's court-appointed psychiatrist.
Yeah, right.
Yeah, come on now. Weird stuff that has just come out over the years that they took.
People just kind of glazed over when it happened. They didn't know what they were looking at then,
They didn't. No, nobody did. Yeah. Nobody understood. They didn't put the pieces together. But William Joseph Bryan, interesting character, and allegedly the guy that programmed Sirhan to start shooting when he saw the woman in the polka dot dress, right? RFK must die, RFK must die, RFK must die, over and over and over and over and over and over. Yeah.
Well, and so I was reading a bunch of books on hypnotism. I spent a good year or two just down that rabbit hole. And I ultimately get to neurolinguistic programming. There's a bunch of books that were kind of the gateways between hypnosis when it was early being developed and experimented with, and then what ultimately becomes neurolinguistic programming. And the more I read a lot of those books, there's one book in particular called The Meaning of Magic. It's got a fucking unhinged cover. It's amazing. It's one of my favorite books. But basically, they lay out a lot of the techniques behind neurolinguistic programming, and I found it incredibly hard after reading that book to not notice it fucking everywhere.
Yeah.
Like advertising in the newspaper. All you have to do is say certain things over and over again, and most people are just going to accept it as fact. If they hear it enough, they're just going to start saying it themselves and accept it as fact.
Yeah.
And that
the whole way of the repetitive words putting people into a hypnotic trance.
Yeah, sure.
Because a lot of time, one of the techniques that Brian would use is he'd start a sentence that would really get people into a traumatic memory, a traumatic state, and then he'd get to some final point, and then he'd be like the, and he'd repeat the a bunch of times, and that repetition would get them so focused and so weird that's the kind of repetition that would put them under, hypnotically. And you can see a lot of that in Sirhan's journal when you read it, the types of, he'd start writing a sentence, and then he'd stop on a word and write the same word over and over and over and over and over. And that's a technique that's used with the neurolinguistic programming to induce hypnotic trance. So it's there's some weird stuff in there when you get into how easy it is to, we're just software, man. We're just software running.
I would always make the joke we're Pavlov's dog. We all think that we're humans and we're not susceptible to this shit, and most people are just delightfully unaware. And I mean, you and me, we're guilty of it too. We buy things. We defer to certain brands. That's program. That's the base level advertising programming that we've accepted our entire life, and we think that is harmless, but in reality it's the same mechanism. So to summarize, it doesn't shock me why a lot of people, when you say what you say, or even when I say what I say, why they get resistant. It makes sense, because we're challenging the programming. When we say something that's you've heard this so many times, you've told yourself this so many times, that it hurts you when somebody makes you think about it differently. And instead of genuinely questioning it, it's exactly. Fucking exactly. Well, dude, this is probably the good spot to stop for this one. I'd love to have you back on if you're down.
You could go for a whole nother hour.
Yeah, no, I 100% know that we could easily nerd out about any tangent that we got onto, but thank you again. I'm going to have your website, and I'm just going to share this too so people can know. This will be in the description for people who are listening and watching. alienscientist.com. This is your website. YouTube is a treasure trove of unpackings of all of the things we discussed in much greater detail with incredible guests.
I'm sorry I'm not more organized. It's real hard for me even to find stuff that I talked about in the past. And I do a lot of like 2-hour live streams where it's just info dumps of a week's worth of research. And I just have to close 40 tabs and do a stream on them all before I close.
Honestly, whenever one of your when I see there's the new post, I just put it on, and I'm like, I don't even really read the title because it's just I'm there for the journey. But for people who want to explode any of the things that we talked about, definitely go check out Alien Scientists on YouTube. Check out the website, like and support Jeremy and what he does. I don't know if you want me to share your Instagram too, but I can add that link in the description.
I haven't really posted on there in a while, but yeah, that's cool. I'm on X too. At Jeremy Rys UFO, and one word, Jeremy Rys UFO.
Oh yeah, that's my problem.
Yep, and they'll find me. They'll go,
look at that. Look at that.
No.
Fucking nonsense. I'll get it on X. I'm not signed in.
Yeah, that algorithm's working.
I'll have that link in the description too. Yeah, dude, thank you so much for what you do. Like your coverage of these topics is like the only sober shit that I've found, and especially
there's some good ones out there, man. There's a couple good channels and
not
stuff.
Not saying there aren't, but by and large, most of like the big names in this space right now are really not doing it justice, and you're one of the only people that's coming in with and again like engaging with the people that matter. For those who like Jack Sarfati, like you've got a bunch of incredible interactions with that guy too. Yeah. He's I love when he shows up because he's also unhinged in the best possible ways. But it's like the most sobering and tangible look at a lot of these topics. And I just feel like it's not, people really just don't do it justice, but you do. So
I appreciate that, man, a lot. I've worked to try to make sense of this stuff myself, and it's quite a ride. Yeah, it's a fun rabbit hole to go. All these topics are fun rabbit holes to go down, and it's good to have someone that has like been doing it before 2017 for already a decade or so, a decade and a half before then. So they have all that, because there's so much stuff that just disappears and gets hidden from the internet.
Yeah, sure.
And you lose those perspectives, you lose that knowledge if you don't have the people, with that perspective and stuff. So hopefully, I think that's probably my greatest, contribution to all this is that sort of OG perspective. So thank you for having me, man. And this was a great conversation, man.
Yeah, we'll definitely have you back for sure.
For sure. I'm going to share this one with my audience too.
Hell yeah. All right, folks, this has been the Totally Legitimate Business Podcast. Thank you for listening and watching, and thank you again, Jeremy. We'll catch you all on the next one.
This has been the Totally Legitimate Business Podcast. The end. With your host, James Oliva. Executive producers, Clint G and James Oliva. That's obnoxious. Sound design, mix, and master by James Oliva. Literally no one cares. For more Totally Legitimate Business, subscribe to our YouTube channel at Totally Legitimate Business, or add us on TikTok at TLB Pod. When will this end? Thank you for listening. Now get back to work. Move it along, buddy.